Hello, everybody, and welcome to What's the Story podcast. This is WTS 309. My name is Danny Murray.
And I'm Graham Merrigan. How are you, Danny?
Right. Good, tired, Grant. I always find the week of bank holiday kind of throws you out of sync.
I agree.
You try to catch up and it's just, so I'm a little
The
bit
disaster.
yeah. But I'm in good form and I'm just delighted that we've managed to have about 6 consecutive days of no rain, which makes for a lovely change. It's not exactly as warm as I'd like it to be, but the fact
Yeah.
that and yes, to people who are listening, this podcast has reached middle age because we're opening with weather chat. So
But it are you not counting? Well, I don't know about Leash, but there was rain during the night. One of the nights, I believe it was Sunday night.
don't count that, Grant.
Don't
It,
count it. Fair enough.
it only matters if you're awake and it impacts you.
Did you hear me? Fucking Professor Rectable there.
Listen, it's grand. Oh, you know what? It's weird though because we barbecued on Sunday. We took advantage of the fact that it was sunny, and on Monday when I woke up, then middle age again kicking in, I instantly went, I should have put the Jesus cover on the barbecue last night because
Oh no! Did you go? Did you go? It reminds me of an episode of King of the Hill years ago.
Oh, Hank Hill, huh?
Hank Hill, yeah. What a show!
Unreal, man.
I
Unreal.
watched a couple of episodes during lockdown. I remember I hadn't watched it for years, and it's just very, very funny.
It is, yeah, it is. Hank Hill and his anger issues used to give me great entertainment.
Bobby.
Bobby. Love it.
Bobby Hill.
But yeah, anyway, look, so we're all good, Mero, basically, is the long and short of that. And I'm very much so looking to, as this goes out, the great news is Bruce Springsteen is on the island of Ireland, and I'm very much so looking
At the moment, is he?
Well, I'd say he is now, yeah, because his first
Yeah.
concert is in Belfast on Thursday. We're recording this on Wednesday. So he'll be in Belfast Thursday night, Kilkenny Sunday night, Cork Thursday night, Dublin Sunday night.
Lovely. And when are you going to see him?
I'm going to Croker on the Sunday, and I'm 95% sure I'll go to Kilkenny on the Sunday as well.
So sorry. Is he playing in Croke Park this Sunday?
No, he's playing in Kilkenny this Sunday.
Are you going to that?
95% certain I'm going to go, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And
will you just drive down and drive home?
Yeah, it's only about 45, 50 minutes from here.
Where's he playing in Kilkenny?
Nolan Park.
Nolan Park.
It's owned by that shower,
Yeah.
Yeah. That shower being the
you must be
association.
You must be very excited then.
I am giddy as a goose, Graham.
And he plays about 3 hours, does he?
Oh yeah. Yeah, easily. You'll get about 30 songs out of him.
Not to piss in your parade.
Yeah.
But your feedback from seeing him the last time was you were not happy with his set list. Well, has the set list changed?
I haven't looked.
So you're just going to be surprised. You usually look at set lists pre-gig.
I do normally, and I've kind of said, no, do you know what? Like, let's just go and let's just take it song by song and enjoy it. I think last time I just felt like, because his most recent album, Letter to You, honestly, Bruce is well into his 70s. He shouldn't be producing new music as good as he is. You only speaking artists get to a stage in their career where the new stuff comes out and everybody kind of goes, yeah, great, yeah, but it's dirt, right? It's just not that good. But Bruce has continued to produce actually good records. And Letter to You was like unbelievable, I think. It's genuinely one of his best. And I just would have liked to have heard more of the new album as opposed to some of the greatest hits. Don't get me wrong, I'd go and watch the greatest hits 99 times out of 100 as well. But I think last year as well, I was a little bit I felt like it was the first time I saw him where age looked like it was an issue and whatever. But then in the aftermath, weeks later, it turned out he was being treated for illness. And I've no doubt that was impacting it. and I've seen a couple of clips from more recent shows, and it looks like he's back to his energetic self and
He's
whatnot.
come back to Ireland quite soon, hasn't he?
Yeah, I was shocked to be honest with you. Like I genuinely, like I think I said it on this podcast, I think I said it to you. I really thought the last time he was here could be genuinely the last time that we see him and the E Street Band, purely because like that he's getting on a bit. I wasn't expecting him to go back to back years doing European tours. Like I really wasn't. But
Yeah,
I'm here for it. I'm loving it. I'm delighted he is, and I am buzzing to go and see him.
deadly.
A great summer of concerts, man. I'm absolutely. I feel like this is the first year post COVID where it's like the concert buzz is back. You know?
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Loads
Oh
of
no,
music.
I
Loads.
had that in 2022.
Very good. Well done. You're ahead of me.
I feel like COVID was a generation ago.
And now it's when you mentioned lockdown there a second ago, as if it was last week, and I was like, man, it's 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's four
It's
years ago.
just bananas. Like
Um,
it's 4 years.
this week on the pod, Danny.
Indeed. Yes. Yeah. Talk to me.
So, as you're well aware, I participated in a documentary produced by the award-winning producer Susan Dennehy. Um, it's called Last One on the Train, and there's 6 episodes. I was episode 5. Episode 6 is this coming Sunday, and it's the last episode. But it is a very important documentary, I suppose, mostly about disability awareness and experiences living with a disability, and more so a wheelchair user, to be specific. Um, there's a lot of interesting characters in it. Actually, episode 4, Sophia, 13-year-old activist, is superb. It's brilliant. Um, she is just a trailblazing powerhouse at such a young age. And I'm recommending all our listeners to go back onto Spotify, go the last one on the train and listen to them all. But Sophia, episode 4, is, I'm going to use the word, she's an inspiration at that age. So, um, this week on the podcast, we're going to interview the legendary award-winning producer, Susan Dennehy. Susan, how are you?
I'm good. I'm very good. Well, I'm knackered because
Really?
I went out for a run this evening, and the app told me it was a 5K run, but it was an 8K run. They forgot to tell me about the warm up and the warm down. So I was absolutely exhausted.
So you won't be doing that again in a hurry.
No, it definitely won't. My daughter got me this Nike running app, and I just do what I'm told. So you're halfway around the Phoenix Park going, oh, Jesus, why did I start this? You know? But I'm
Vomiting
grand
everywhere.
after that. I'm grand. Yeah, good form.
We're recording on a Wednesday evening. This Sunday, episode 6 of your brilliant documentary, in which I had the pleasure of being a part of, Last One on the Train, airs. How have you finding this whole experience? I mean, you're already an award-winning producer, so you're no stranger to radio documentaries. But how have you found? How have you? I suppose as well. Actually, tell us why you picked this topic.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I actually think I've been building up to this series for a long time. So most of the work I do, I've been working freelance for 20 years. I've actually been making docs for 30 years, feature programs for 30 years. And so I've been building up to this one for a long time. And I suppose dancing around it until I felt I had the skills and the right way in to it. I kind of knew I wanted to make something substantial around disability, and I had made a few other features around it. So I made one about Grace's transferring from special school to mainstream school and our experience with her. And I made another one about Jack Kerrigan, a guy who founded the IWA, which was just a fascinating story. His memoirs came to me, and they had to be turned into a doc. They just had to be brought to a bigger audience. And then I followed 3 girls getting ready for the Paralympics in Rio. So I've been skirting around it, but I just thought I was getting madder and madder and madder watching Grace's experience as she got older in life.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it resonated with what you said, Graham. Like she's 20 tomorrow, and she's starting to get into that independent phase, moving out, transitioning out of the whole school thing. She's doing her leaving at the moment. So anyway, I just kind of thought, nobody has, well, obviously people have, but the path isn't beaten. The place isn't suitable for her. It's not fit for purpose. Society isn't working for her. We just have too many places we go where it's like we can't get in, or we have problems, or she comes home saying 2 buses went past, or whatever. So that was in my head all along, that so this has to be exposed, because my friends who don't have any connection with disability other than me knew nothing about it. So first of all, I felt it has to be exposed. And then the other thing is that I think people, non-disabled people, they don't understand the disabled community sometimes. And I'd like to think we're evolved enough that we all treat each other exactly the same, but I think there's a kind of a shyness or a super politeness or a positive prejudice or something that gets in the way sometimes. I see that with Grace, like people handing her money, like, or people being super nice, like super, super nice. And you're like, that's not
necessary.
a normal level of nice, like, kind of. So I think
patronizing, is it?
Bit patronizing, not meant to be like, but
yeah.
I don't
well intent, but like,
yeah. And I
What's the
don't
story with the money? No one's ever tried to give me money.
you have a look about you though. All right.
But she was very put out by it, but her sister was there. I'll take it, It was a bit, but it's a combination of that, and also then kind of there was one time we were in the train station, and Grace went up to she was young now, but she went up to the customer service kiosk herself, because I was trying to teach her independence, to ask something, and she was in talking to the girl, and some older woman came in and literally leaned across her like as if she wasn't there. So it's a combination of, you meet really bad attitudes, you meet really good. We find it very seldom that we meet, apart from friends who know her well, people who are just normal. It's just normal. She's just a normal person, So I feel like there's a bit of work to be done. Graham, you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I feel like there's a bit of work to be done to normalise disability. And a lot of it is well-meaning. I think, people are great. But I think if rights were enshrined, then you wouldn't be relying on personalities getting it right. I think we'd just have a better attitude in general. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes it can be like, it is for a lot of the time well-meaning, and it is sometimes, and I do be like, oh geez, you didn't have to ask that. You're kind of going, after a kind of incident or after a situation occurs, I do find myself always immediately reflecting, saying, that shouldn't annoy me sometimes, number one. Number two, they're only being nice. But then I'm thinking, number three, I didn't need their help, but maybe somebody less mobile or whatever might have needed the help. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the happy medium is with it. There is sometimes where I do think where, if I'm pushing down a pathway, or even if I'm in work, if you're going into a public place and there's 2 doors and one is always open, now the one door is sufficient, but somebody will like, oh, wait till I get that second door for you. Or, and you're kind of going, or then they'll say, oh, can you fit through there? You're kind of going, I reckon JCB would fit down there. I'm in a little chair. Of course they can fit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I sometimes feel with it.
Yeah, it's funny one. Like, I basically think we've skipped a step. I think we operated in like a charitable model, the medical model, very paternalistic. People were treated as if they had no kind of agency at all once upon a time. And then we went into, oh, we're too cool to even mention it, in a way that so I think, and as well as that, I think it was weird for me, and it's weird for a lot of people who have a family member who has a disability, because I want everyone I'm talking to know how well able and, you know, ordinary and amazing a personality she is, the same as all my kids, right? But she also needs supports. So, you know, and everyone has their own level of supports. So I feel like I'm being disloyal saying how much crap she has to go through or how much extra stuff she has to do in the day. I don't want to highlight that because I want her to come across as normal. But actually, I figured it out making this. And before I made this, doing the research, equality doesn't mean, like, and I've said this to Grace about herself and her brother and sister as well. If they needed practical, logistical support to live their lives, which they do from time to time, I give it to them. You just need a higher level at that. That doesn't mean I feel sorry for you or I'm giving you more love or attention. I'm giving you the practical support you need. Like when your UGG falls off and you need hand putting it back on. That is a practical, logistical matter. That is nothing to do with anything else. And you see, once we acknowledge the practical, logistical help that certain people, like a lot of people, are very able and independent with disabilities, but there's, as you say, varying degrees. But if we don't acknowledge the support people need who need it, that's where you end up with people not getting PAs, not getting, you know, there's as many disabilities and levels of disability as there are disabled people. You know what I mean? But everyone has their own set of needs. And I don't think we should brush the needs under the carpet, but that doesn't mean, because I'm helping Grace with her shoes, that she's a toddler. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a totally different thing. It's like if I acquired an injury and I was laid up for 6 weeks, I'd need more practical help than I do today. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I think we need to differentiate the practical, logistical needs from patronising, thinking someone's not able, because someone could be like Padraig in the series, not able to speak, not able to move at all, but perfectly well able, and has, you know, really bright, great opinions, a lot to say. Do you know what I mean? So you just have to take people at what they're able to do, and it's a continuum. I actually think we're all on a continuum. We're all on, like, there's the physically elite at one end, the people who are less unable at the other, and we're all somewhere on that bloody continuum. It's the same with people's ability, academic ability. It's the same with everything, you know. We're all on that, and even a spectrum for autism. I think we all have different levels of anxiety, we've different levels of social skills, we've different levels of everything. You know, I just what my graph would look like, you know.
I think
it's true, like, you know.
Yeah, I think you've hit a very important point, though, Susan. It's that idea of sort of equity more than equality, I suppose, where we all start from a different point, right, on this continuum. And naturally, some of us will require more help or less help than others, depending on where we start on this. So the idea of, it's not like when we talk about equality and people sort of, and I know they're probably used interchangeably, but I think that notion that everybody gets the same amount can be off-putting in a way. Whereas when you talk about it in that sense of the continuum and saying, well, I won't need some of those supports, but I'll need this little bit of support, or I don't need all of that, but I need a little bit of this. And it's that notion of how we make people realize and how we get people to see that, you know, like to your point, Meryl, you know, people don't need to be legging it to make sure 2 doors are open for you kind of thing. And then it creates a little bit of a scene and a little bit of a visual yoke. The same way, if, you know, if a woman was approaching the door, if I was approaching the door, somebody would just hold the door open for me and I'd be like, thanks very much. That's all that's needed in that scenario, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny as well, though, because when we're talking about accessibility in public places, and I said with Susan that if a place isn't accessible, all you want is the attitude to be positive in terms of a manager or a supervisor or whatever, to kind of say, listen, we actually aren't accessible, but you are more than happy, or you're more than welcome to use this facility. And it happened to me on this past Sunday. I went to a restaurant with my family. It wasn't accessible. at all. Had a step up that I was able to manage, had 2 steps down into where we were sitting, and I had no wheelchair toilet. But I knew that before going, and they were very, very, very accommodating and couldn't have been better. Um, but it doesn't change the fact that these places should be accessible. Everywhere should be accessible. The reaction that I've gotten from my episode with you, Susan, has been very, very well. Like, I was a bit nervous as we approached there and time. Now, thankfully, I was out with the family and got a bit distracted. But you text me and you were delighted, and then I was delighted. But a lot of people that would have known me probably since I'm a child and are my age or a bit under, they could they couldn't believe, they thought. I got a message today off a friend that said, "Geez, I thought everything was. I thought it would have been mandatory for places to be accessible. Are we ever going to get to a place where it is mandatory to have everywhere accessible? And that's everything. That's whether it be socially, that's living, that's travel, everything. Are we ever going to get to a place like that, do you think?"
I don't think we'll ever get 100%, but I really feel in my bones we're on the cusp of change. I really do feel that now. I'm a natural optimist, so that's a danger always. But honestly, you've got to have a reason for change. So, I mean, you and a lot of other people in the series quoted the States. The States is accessible because of the vets, primarily, the veterans coming back, right? So things generate events and laws and activism generates, like collective activism generates change. I feel myself that there's a couple of factors coming together. Social media, because a lot of disabled people aren't physically able to be at things, but they can be at them online or virtually, and their voices are being a lot more heard. I think it suits a lot of people who can't get out. So there's a lot more voices being heard. So the referendum, the care referendum, the result of that was an example to me of people coming out. And what happens, the optics of things online matter to the politicians. So I think that's probably a big part of it. I think the other thing is that, you've got to remember that disability, people living with disabilities in society is relatively new in Ireland. It's kind of new. Rehabilitation only happened after World War II in any serious way. So people with disabilities are living long and full and rewarding lives now. So Jack Kerrigan, the guy I made the doc about, he would have been one of the first recipients of rehabilitation. So it's very new, really, relatively, if you zoom out on the timeline of history.
Yeah.
I feel that, other minorities, and you mentioned this to me, which I found absolutely fascinating and thought about it long and hard on one of our chats. Other minorities, I felt when I pitched this that we've had the Me Too moment. Women have had Me Too. The LGBTQI have had equality. There's the Black Lives Matter. There's been all these huge, giant steps forward in terms of equality for other minorities. And I just feel like we are literally the last ones now. And I say the royal we because Grace is in my family and I feel it personally. But, I do feel that that's happening. I think we need more voices like Tom Clonan. I think he is, he's driving it. And he was beating the drum for the care referendum long before I got on board. Once I figured it out, it's like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, well, he educated me as well, to be honest.
Yeah, things like that. But I also think there's a time for things. And I genuinely feel like that time is kind of, there. But we do need to keep pushing. And I suppose that was the motivation for the series. Like, I want to it sounds really awful, but I really want to leave the world better for Grace than it was, when we found it, when she was born and when she acquired her disability. Like, I just want there to be a much less percentage of places and things happening that are negative in her life. I want the positive to outweigh the negative. And I suppose I just thought, what can I do? Like, my skills are radio production. I can make something that puts a kind of a PR for disabled equality job, but also I really wanted everyone in it to be portrayed as the lovely, interesting, because disability is normalized for me, so I don't really notice it as much when I'm with people. So I was able to, and to be honest, Graham, I talked to so many fantastic people in the run up to the series, and the lovely thing is that when you're kind of when you have a difficult station in life in terms of how people treat you and disappointments and stuff, like I just feel like this is the gentlest, most patient, most likable bunch of people. And I thought a lot of people I know don't know that, and I think radio is a great one as well, because you can just meet someone and hear their voice and then hear their issues. Whereas if people are bringing a prejudice, and the minute they step into a room with a physically disabled person, they're going to bring all the negative prejudice they have with them. So I thought that it's kind of equality and fighting prejudice by stealth in a way, the program. And I make no apologies for that, because I don't think that's a thing of the past yet. And I think we need to name it and shame it in order to get rid of it fully.
Absolutely. Was there anything in your, obviously, as you said, you are we because of Grace, your daughter. So, and I haven't got to know you a lot. I think you're a force. You called me a force of nature in the ad for the episode, but in actual fact, I think you're a force of nature. I think you're up there with Tom Clone in an important figure, because you articulate everything brilliantly. Is there anything that you found? Obviously, you've been around a lot of inequality, but was there anything that you found in the 6 episodes and in the lead up to making this? Was there anything that you found shocking that you didn't know before, or did anything stand out to Jesus Christ, this is awful?
Oh, yeah. And actually, that's the other thing about the series, just to say before I answer that, I learned a lot. Like, I definitely chipped away at whatever remaining internal ableism I had, or not internal, I suppose it's external, but it feels like it's internal. But I had ableism, and it actually moved me forward talking to people. And just people say little things, and it's the little asides that you come away going, actually really learned something there. Do you know what I mean? And I was doing that wrong or whatever. But what shocked me was I set out deliberately in the proposal to compare Ireland to other countries. So in each episode, I was going to figure out what was happening in other countries. And so, for example, in Lisa, in episode 1, Lisa becomes the first wheelchair user to become a primary school teacher in Ireland. The first person to become a primary school teacher in the States was 50 years ago this year. Like, that was shocking to me that we're that far behind. And actually, Judith Heumann was the woman. She became one of the big names in human rights activism.
Yeah, was she in that documentary on Netflix, Crib Camp?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was brilliant.
I actually have it I have it saved on the player to watch it. I've been building up to it. But
brilliant.
So she's amazing. But the fact that we were 50 years later was a bit shocking. And then so when I was interviewing Padraig, I have a shocker for each one. I think nearly Padraig's dad was telling me, because they lived in Germany and the system there is so much better. But I confirmed it afterwards, like 1,300 people under the age of 65 live in old age, what we used to call old age homes in Cork growing up, but they're nursing homes. So there are a lot of young people. There's 1,300, that's the magic number. Young people inappropriately placed in nursing homes.
That is just disgraceful.
Shocking to me. I just couldn't believe it. And it took a family to say, no way for this to even be a thing. So that was shocking there. Mike and Leona, I wasn't really shocked in episode 3, because we try to go on hikes regularly and we're often meeting, those kind of situations and stuff. But I was taken aback at how they described California, and down to the telescopes being at eye level and them getting onto Alcatraz like a rock in the ocean.
Yeah.
No bother, toured the whole thing. So that was shocking too.
See, it's mad because, sorry to interrupt you for a second, but it's mad because we do set out a low expectation for anything. So whenever anything is good, then you're in celebratory mode because you didn't expect it to be good. Because when Michael and Leona were talking so elegantly about gaining access to Alcatraz, it made me remember that I actually went to South Africa, and I was on Robben Island, and it was accessible. Not only was it accessible, they had your own bus, an accessible bus that met you off the boat, and you got your own tour of the island. But and as well as that, actually, I went to South Africa to go to a wedding, and the wedding was in the middle of nowhere. And on the way to it, I says, I wonder if there's going to be a wheelchair toilet here. Hardly not. And I was actually in my head going, I'll have to dehydrate for the day. We're going to be here for about 7 or 8 hours. Rocked up to the place in the middle of nowhere, and I had a wheelchair toilet. I was like, you've low expectations for all these places, and
Yeah.
then when it happens, it's amazing. So that I could when Michael and Leona were so eloquently telling us about the telescope, I was like, sure, one, I was like, sure, why wouldn't they? And then you're kind of going, there's telescopes down Dunleary Pier, and I don't think any of them I can reach.
They're small things, but I think they're like every one of us, the 6 people involved, said the same thing. They're the kind of things that you only know if you're living the experience. So if you have lived experience, people with lived experience informing it, then you're not going to make those mistakes, or you'll think of those things, which are, they're all small things, but like they're really the kind of icing on the cake. They're like the life enhancing kind of moments. Do you know what I mean? They're really important, actually, and that was the other thing I felt about Grace always growing up. Like, and my husband used to say, "Oh, stop giving out, will you?" I'd give out everywhere we went. And I said, "No, hang on a minute. If we keep accepting that she can't, like the lift in the Parnell cinema was always out of order when she would go."
I got stuck in it loads of times.
Do all these things? But I think, what does that, as she was developing as a person and growing, like from a 1-year-old all the way, I've watched it now up to 18, living in a wheelchair. And what does it say if you are constantly told, sorry, you can't, no, you can't, no, we can't, you can't, no, that's not for you, no, everyone else can, but you can't. And I thought, that's the tender age of like her teens or whatever, when you're forming your identity of yourself, your view of yourself, and all the positive things that happen in your life as a kid. I think I watched me others, they're all how you form this positive image of yourself. You get a rock solid image of yourself because of all the positive experiences. And even if there's all these tiny micro discriminatory experiences, you start to nearly believe it about yourself if you let it, which is why I felt we always had to object, so they're sick of me here, but I just feel like, no, I'm never going to say bad things happen to people. How you deal with it is what's important. So if you can't get into a place, we're not going to slink off with our tail between our legs. We're going to say, that's terrible. We should have been able to get into that place. No, it gets a bit tedious, and you have to be a little bit, because there's so many places that you can't get into. But I just think you have to keep calling it out and beating the drum. And no matter if people don't like it, let them feck off,
Exactly.
But and sometimes, like Grace would often say to me, "Mom, just don't, please don't," and I let it go because she's tired of me, so that's fine. But occasionally, but I know deep down she is happy. She'll say sometimes thanks for speaking up, and she'll self-advocate quite well now herself as well. So I have to take a back seat now. It's killing me.
Yeah. She's
what about now?
Yeah. She'd be flying the nest now on her own, and you'd be like, "Oh no, what I give out about?"
Oh God, I know. Well, actually, we were all listening to your episode here. So my son, myself, and my husband were all listening to it. And I think when you were saying that school was handy enough, and then going out into the world as an adult, we're on the cusp of that now. So that transition is one that you get this, I call it kind of disability anxiety. It's like, oh, what's going to happen? Or when you're driving up to a holiday apartment or something, fuck will we be able to get into the toilet? Sorry for my French, but it's like you just get this kind of tightness in your chest going, oh, will it be, or if we're going to a concert, or, will it be okay? And then, like you say, when it is, it's a really good day, like you're high as a kite. But I find that destination anxiety, and I think that's the anxiety for how will she get on now in college? And we're even looking at colleges now. Will they be accessible for her? Some are better than others. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's just been an education. And I suppose I didn't have disability on my radar either before Grace acquired hers at 1 year old. So it's been a steep learning curve for me. And I just feel like I want to kind of let other people in on that who haven't got it on their radar. And I don't blame people for not knowing. If it doesn't touch your life, you don't know.
Absolutely,
but it's about policy, not people. It's not individual people or personalities. You shouldn't be relying on meeting a good doctor or a nice nurse or a decent doorman. It should be policy. There's a level playing field. And then you can have your personalities outside of that,
Absolutely. And I was saying to my friends, and I was saying to Danny as well, that they would have listened to it, to my episode, say, and they wouldn't have probably have learned anything new. So I was asking Danny, you wouldn't have learned anything new from my episode, would you have?
No, like we were kind of talking about this, and I was saying that, like, I've heard you make these points kind of over the years, and I've heard you kind of share some of your experiences over the years, but it doesn't necessarily take away from the meaning behind the message. And I think, like, the thing to remember with this as well, Mara, was that, like, you weren't just talking to 6 or 7 mates in doing this brilliant series. You're talking to people who potentially would never have thought about that perspective, or would never have considered some of the things that you highlight and some of the things that you mentioned in there. The bit, and again, it wasn't the first time that I'd heard you make the point, but it made me remember one of the first times you told me about it, and it was the piece you said around wanting to go to the Christy Brown exhibition or the museum or whatever, and there's no way of twisting, there's no way of spinning, there's no way of anything other than just saying that's a load of bollocks, that an exhibition like that is not accessible. Everything should be, but it's almost like that one exemplifies it more than anything for me, in terms of asking what the is going on here. That
Craggy Island stuff.
Worse.
I also think this, like, you're right there about that, because if you think about it, obviously all exhibitions should be accessible. But if you are putting on an exhibition about someone with a disability, and only able-bodied people can come and see, what does that say? What's the role of disabled people in society then?
Yeah.
As something in an exhibition like that, there was something particularly, like, it was laughable. We were all kind of gobsmacked here. Like, my husband just couldn't get over it. He was like, gee, I can't believe that. Like, it's hard to believe. And I thought Graham said it very well. I loved the way he said, like, that's a shambles. It is a shambles.
Yeah.
But what does it say as well? Like, if you're not, you know what I mean? Who's
it's learning? It's a really low bar, though, isn't it?
Huh?
A really low bar, isn't it? Like,
it's a low bar. It's a low bar. And other communities that are discriminated against would say that low expectations is a measure of discrimination as well. I know the traveller community would say that. I made a documentary about them recently. And low expectations is something that's mentioned in all their policy documents. Like, they're really on the ball, actually, in terms of lobbying for equality. And they are treated very badly as well, in a different way. But I kind of admire that they've named it. They've named things like low expectations as part of the issue,
it's interesting. Why would they have named it in the policy?
Well, they in a lot of their policy work and a lot of what they're doing, they would have low expectations as one of the ways of identifying the prejudice and the discrimination against them. So I guess it's just that they articulate it really well.
Yeah.
I interviewed loads of them, loads of people from the traveller community who would have all mentioned it as one of the measures of how society views them, and low expectations. And so I was making a thing about, it was a feature about their experience of the school system, and it would have been a case that nobody really bothered teaching them anything because, well, they'll be leaving early. They won't be staying on in school. Whereas, in fact, if they had received an education, they may have stayed on in school. That we're talking back now a couple of decades as well. But there's still low expectation of kids in the traveller community because they're only getting part-time hours in the schools. They've got this system where they only do a couple of hours, which is actually very similar to the disabled community as well in terms of school provision. So, there'd be kids with intellectual disabilities or AD who would be getting kind of part-time hours in schools. The schools aren't set up for them. But that would have been what happened to, and is still happening to traveller kids as well. So, I mean, it is a ghetto, like there, and it is important that while we celebrate, the people's disabled identity and people's achievements in themselves and the ordinariness of people, it's important as well to just keep calling it out because we're not there yet. And I keep saying, when I talk to them in RTE, they would love to be, and the guys in RTE were interested. They were saying, well, we'd just rather have disabled people on a panel in their area of expertise as opposed to looking at the issue of disability. And I said, but we're skipping a step.
Yeah.
There's a lot to fix before we're there. I'd love to think we were that evolved, but I don't think we are as a society, unfortunately. Do you know?
Well,
I think they could more fixing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. They could have started many years ago, RTE, when I applied to be the new host of the Den, and I didn't even get a rejection letter.
Did you?
Yeah.
You would have been brilliant at that.
I had to do a videotape and everything. Me and my friend did it in the sitting room of my house, and not a dicky board did I hear from them. And it even said when
really bad.
Yeah, and when I did the application, it was like, you will not receive your VHS back, your audition tape.
You're showing your age now with the VHS reference, Mero.
I know, Jesus. But
did you notice I bat an eyelid at that?
Yeah. I'm kind of joking about that, but I'm kind of not joking in the sense that there is no real disability representation on these channels. Like, if you look at Channel 4 since the London Paralympic Games in 2012, like Channel 4 to this day still have disabled representation. They have travel shows with people that use wheelchairs. They've all sorts of disabilities represented on all their cross programs on their channel. And I mean, RTE, it can no longer be just a tick the box exercise in facilitating a debate like that. Like you said, they're missing a step. And one of those steps is having, I don't know, a person with a disability that is a radio host or is a TV presenter or whatever.
Yeah,
and that helps. That 100% helps.
I think they were kind of progressive back in the good old days. Like, I remember the woman on reception when I worked there a million years ago was a blind woman, and they had a lot of people with disabilities working in the organisation, not necessarily fronting things. And I thought they were very progressive in that. But yeah, I just feel like outside the box, I think, was Olin McGowan's show was on, and it was particularly around disability issues. And I think until we get a suite of laws that protect the legal rights of our citizens, you're not going to get the freedom to interview for a job the same as anyone else. You're not going to get the freedom. Like, that step is missing. And until that happens, and FLAC even came out, the Free Legal Advice Centres, and they have a legal service in there that are in the public interest. And they don't, I worked there before in comms, and I know from them, they don't come out lightly on anything. And they have come out and said our laws around disabled people need to be reformed and updated. And it's as basic as that. Reform the law, and everything else will follow. You only have to look at your example of the LGBTQI community getting, the legal thing changes everything because it trickles down into society then. And also, you need to be able to say to places like, if I can't get it, I'll have to sue you. You have to be able to say, well, this isn't accessible. They have to have, there has to be a carrot and a stick,
Exactly. Yeah.
You can't just assume it. And you can't rely on people being nice or informed. Like, I have two mates who make TV programs, and they're doing a fantastic series now for Stopwatch for RTE. And the main presenter on that is a woman who uses a wheelchair. Amy Hassett, I think, is her name, but she's presenting that. It's a science-based, climate-based series for kids. But that's because they are just off their own bat wanting to be inclusive. They didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I'm not saying you should have to do that, but there were quotas when we were looking at the gender equality for, sometimes you need some of these things in place in order to get to the place where you want to be, where you don't need them.
And that's it. And like, I recently started a new job, and one of the things that impressed me most was in a meeting where they're talking about diversity, where they're talking about different things. Somebody highlighted something in the office, like this. They were talking about kind of space, and they were talking about issues and whatever. And somebody highlighted something around the office as kind of like, well, we don't have a wheelchair user working here at the moment. And the response straight away was, that's not to say we won't in the future. So straight away it was like, okay, just because it's not there today doesn't mean it won't be needed tomorrow, kind of thing. Yeah. And I think it's that forward thinking and that sort of thing is important, because, as you said, like, there's a bit of carrot and stick that's needed here. There's always going to be people who respond to the carrot, but unfortunately we do need the stick from time to time.
Yeah. I do think so. And I think money talks, unfortunately. I mean, that's really good to hear that in your office, because I think, relatively speaking, like, whatever way you look at it, it's a small part. It is a minority. Like, it's not the majority of the population. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, it's not good enough not to have it. And do you know what, as well? Like, Mero, you probably find this. Like, things are done for you as a person, which is down to you as a person to lobby. Whereas they should just be done. Like, it shouldn't be that the bus was made accessible for you because you fought for it. Or it shouldn't be that even today, somewhere I was, we were at the dental hospital with Grace this morning, and the check-in area, the reception, were all too high. And I said to them, you might want to take a note there, maybe have one of them low enough for someone in a wheelchair. But like, it's like I always imagine it's like you're beating the path through the jungle for the first time. Like, it would be nice once in a while to follow a path that's there, like,
Yeah, but in that respect, with the dental hospital, when that's being done, or if that's being built, builders should be able to say to the customer, you want this height desk, but actually no, it's supposed to be this height. You know, and that's where all that happens as well. And there's just no joint up thinking. And a lot of the time I found there's times in the last 3 or 4 years where I feel we've kind of reversed. We've kind of regressed in terms of public access and in terms of terminology and wording. And you're kind of going, you find yourself saying it's 2024 and how have we regressed in this regard? But
I think it's neglect, Graham.
Like,
basically, if everything in society keeps moving on, and say the building regs stay as they were when they were originally done, they're not fit for purpose anymore. Like, a lot of people in the series said, what do you want? Wave a magic wand. They said the building regs need to be brought up to date. They need to be up to speed. They need to be fit for purpose. So, I mean, if the building regs were there and if you didn't adhere to them, there was a massive fine on you, that would go some of the way towards it, would it not? You know?
Absolutely. 100% it would, yeah. Absolutely. You've done 6 episodes. Last one on the train. We had episode 5 this past Sunday. And what can we expect from the last and final episode 6? which this episode now of What's the Story will air on Saturday. So everyone listens in Saturday. Get on to RT Radio 1, 7:30 Sunday night. What can we expect from the last and final episode?
Oh, you're in for a treat on Sunday. Like they're all so different, and that's what I love about them. They all have their own unique thing. But Mariam Madani, so she's Indian Irish heritage, and she is a wheelchair user, and she is another force of nature. Sorry to steal your crown there and share it with someone, but this woman, the first time I met her, she was dressed as in a Countess Markievicz military costume with a black leather beret and bright red lipstick, reading the Proclamation of Independence for Disabled People outside the GPO. How could you not make a program about this woman? You know,
unbelievable,
phenomenal. So she's when I think of her, I think of joy and colour and music. And we do go to the Discovery Choir. I go to her choir with her, which is really interesting. It's like a metaphor, really, because inside that place, it's their ethos is inclusion. They're for immigrants from all different countries and for all different abilities and everything else. But their ethos is inclusion and diversity. And their motto is discover the beauty in everyone. And they are just the sounds and the energy of it. But she basically is part of the whole arts scene. And she decided she wanted to do this big show around Pride. And then she found out that Disability Pride already existed in Chicago, and she met them and she started out. And I went to the last Disability Pride, the first one last year in July, the march. And it was absolutely brilliant. I never saw anything like that. I never heard of Disability Pride or Power before, and I loved it. And they were all wearing Piss on Pity t-shirts, and it was just, I just got a shiver down my spine. I just thought, these people are, and there was karaoke afterwards. It was just a brilliant day out, but it was also, you know, and I really liked it because outside Trinity where we were gathering, and you'll hear this in the show, for the march, a lot of people had to step off the path because there was so many wheelchairs, and they were throwing these kind of looks. And I was just kind of delighted. And I just thought, back off, the streets are ours today. Like, you can just, you know, Richard Hawley, eat your heart out. It was absolutely brilliant now. Absolutely brilliant. And so we marched up to the front of government buildings outside the Taoiseach's office, and then everyone dispersed. But it was electric. And like she was saying, it was small. I'd say there was 150 people maybe at it. But she was saying, you know, the first LGBTQI marches were tiny as well.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So anyway, that was exciting. But she is exciting, and she's a very unusual take. And she also had the double whammy of being brown-skinned in Ireland growing up as well. She's in her 30s now. So so she talked about that kind of double othered thing as well, which is an interesting, intersectional discrimination is an interesting, you know, interesting for me as someone making programs about it, not very interesting for her living through it. Like, it was tough, you know. But so there's a lot, it's a good one, I think. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it, and also I'm quite sad that the whole process now has kind of come to an end after Sunday. But you enjoyed the whole process, didn't you?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it, and just very enriching. I'm absolutely drained after it. Put my heart and soul into it and lived and breathed it now for since Christmas. Really, it stepped up a lot. Like, I was doing it all year. I was just looking at the contract that came in this time last year from Comishún na Man. But watch this space. I don't know if it's over yet. So that's interesting. So there's a couple of things being talked about. I can't really talk about them now, but other forms of doing something with the information garnered and getting more stakeholders to listen to what came out of it. So there's a kind of that side of it happening, and then possibility of more programs as well. So yeah,
brilliant.
It's great. Fine. Like,
do I need to get an agent, Susan?
I am your agent, Miro.
Oh yeah, sorry, Danny's my agent.
25% of everything.
How many cola bottles does he want?
25. Listen, Susan, thanks ever so much for your time. Thank you. As I've said to you privately, as I've said to you on social media posts, it was a very important series that you undertook. I was kind of, I was reluctant 2 years ago when we first spoke, but not reluctant because I didn't want to take part. Reluctant in that probably there was worse off kind of stories than me. But I think you've done a stellar job, and looking forward to seeing all your next projects. Keeping a close eye.
Well, thanks, Graham, and thanks very much for taking part. I know you've done a lot of vocalizing in the past, and I know you're not at the beginning of your advocacy career like some of the other people in it. And it was a very generous thing that you did to take part. And I think that, seeing someone 19 listening to you here rapt and nodding her head, and I just knew then, then this means something more to her than me nearly. So thank you very much for doing that. You were brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
That's lovely to hear, actually.
Yeah. Oh, she listened to it, and she'd look over, she'd be listening like this, then she'd look over and go, and it was just, I know what he's talking about there. But it's generous to give to younger people coming up as well, especially when you're done a lot of lobbying and advocating of your own, and you get tired of talking about it, I'm sure. And it just was a very generous act, and you were great. And you are, my son, he's into history and politics in a big way. It was listening to it, and when he finished, and he said, "That's very powerful, Mom." He says, "There's nothing like politics and poetry together to really raise the hairs on the back of your neck." So I think that line at the end and the way you articulated it, it felt like political poetry, like a story slam or something. And it was just really great. I mean, there was loads of times when I was sitting with the mic with you going, oh, like gold.
I know. And I was like, are you okay?
No,
are we stopping? And you're like, no, just keep going.
Keep going. But you have a way of articulating things that's, it's down to earth, but there is a kind of there's a bit of poetry in it as well. And I don't want to embarrass you now or anything, but it is very powerful when you hear it like that, because you're passionate about it too. So anyway, I'm thanking you. Don't mind me. I only gave you guys a platform,
Susan, I have to edit and produce him every week. Please don't, because he'll be insufferable now over the next couple of episodes.
To mind his wheelchair, you won't be able to get his head in the door.
I'm telling you.
Thanks very much, Susan.
Never hear the end of it from him now.
Thanks so much for your time. We'll keep in touch. And
I'm sure we'll be seeing you. We'll be seeing you soon. There'll be a wrap party for everyone involved in the series in my gaff. So we'll see you.
We'll wreck the Bowes gaff. I'll wear me Rovers jerseys.
Oh Jesus, yeah, do. That'll start it. It was lovely chatting to you, lads. I could sit all night, but you'd want to just press the button now and turn me off. Don't get me started.
Thanks so much,
Thank
Susan.
you so much. Really appreciate it. Absolutely brilliant chat with Susan there. She's a powerhouse, and anyone that's listened to Doc on One series will, I am sure, have come across her work in the past. And I think sometimes we need people who have a communications background involved in matters that are for the greater good, because they understand and they know how to get ears activated. And sometimes that's the hardest battle, is getting people to not just listen, but to hear you. Yeah. And I feel like she has done an amazing job in doing so. And I know she referenced friend of the show, Tom Clonan, as somebody else who's been absolutely brilliant. But I hope Susan herself realises just how important work that she's doing and has done is as well, to bringing ears to the stories and turning up the dial on people's attention for stuff like this.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. She is you get a buzz of being around her. You open up, and that's what, I suppose that's what she wants, because she's a documentary maker. She makes fantastic radio documentaries. and she is a wonderful ally for people with disabilities. And I'm very thankful she's come into my life, because I find her just brilliant. With my episode, we took a walk down at the new Bats. Obviously, you can hear that in the episode. But then we did mostly the interview in my car, and we probably spoke for about an hour and a half, an hour and 45. Um, Me going on a lot of tangents, and I had a reluctance to do this maybe 6, 7 months ago, but having had two phone calls with her, I was like, no, I'll change my mind because I'm so comfortable around this woman.
Yeah,
And she was brilliant. And you can tell from the interview we just conducted that she is infectious, she is passionate, and she's a powerhouse she's a brilliant, brilliant ally for people with disabilities to have. So delighted she agreed to come on the podcast. Delighted with how the interview has gone. And thank you to Susan and everyone. Go to Spotify, go to the RT radio app, and go back and listen to Last One on the Train, and then seek out all her other previous radio productions because they're brilliant. Now,
absolutely. Yeah,
and I
her
sincerely mean all that hype.
absolutely, absolutely. And at Suze Dennehy on social media as well. Do give her a follow. And as she said there, maybe more to come on this particular topic. So follow, support, and as Mero said, do go back RT Player, Spotify, go back and listen to the series. It is brilliant with amazing, amazing characters and Mero. So sorry, man.
And Mary.
It's been 2 weeks of gushing over you. I have to go back to a heel persona from next
Okay.
week on. Okay.
Yeah, deal.
Right.
Prick. Right. If anyone wants to go back to our other podcasts, you can go to search WTS Pod on any podcast provider, Podbean, Podcast Republic, Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere, everywhere you can get a podcast. You can also go to WTSpod.com. You can reach us out at Danjo Murray. He's at Danjo Murray everywhere, and I'm at Merrigan Mania everywhere. Danny, do we have a new Instagram page?
Well, it's taken us 9 years, but we finally now we haven't posted that into it. And
Well, what's the handle? Give it out anyway.
it's as you've just said, Graham. It's at WTS Pod. And
So check us out on Instagram at WTS Pod. Danny's
Yeah.
going to get to work on a load of funny Instagram posts. Well done, Dan.
we'll start posting stuff once I figure out how you condense 9 years worth of material into a couple of Instagram
Oh,
posts.
Jesus.
And next week we'll probably share the story of how we got the handle. But yeah, that's it.
That'll be for the intro next week.
Exactly, yeah. But look, give us a follow on Instagram, lads. We'll start getting stuff together eventually. And who knows, we might have Mero doing TikTok dances and everything by the end of the year.
I'll do it if you do it.
But you'll be sorry you said that. And that is it for this week. Mero, huge congratulations on that episode. It was absolutely brilliant.
Thank you.
The last one on the train, not the episode of WTS Pod. It'd be a bit too self-congratulatory for me if it was. Anyway, I'm rambling. Graham, can you wrap us up here? Can you get us out of here? Because I've
I just
talked myself
did.
into a tunnel.
Talk to you again soon. Clear eyes.
Full hearts.
Can't lose. Too sweet.